want to talk about what we heard from Brian Cashman. You wrote a column about this, that 25th man. Using that spot wouldn't be unprecedented, but the way that it sounds like he wants to use it is intriguing.
It is, and it fits their system right now. You know, the way they're set up, if Starlin Castro can play shortstop and third base, and that's the key part. I mean, they know he can play shortstop, but he hasn't played third base since rookie ball. If he can be the backup third baseman, then all of a sudden that last spot on the bench, they can rotate that around. I mean that means you can maybe carry Rob Refsnyder for a few days and use him at second when Castro's at third. Then when you need an extra arm, you get rid of Refsnyder, bring up one of these. They have this long list of extra relievers, of AAA relievers. They could shuttle one of those guys up, get rid of him, bring up Greg Bird, play him at first base for 2 or 3 days to rest Alex Rodriguez and Mark Teixeira. Send him out, bring up an outfielder to rest Gardner or Ellsbury. I mean, the way their system is set up right now, it works pretty well, and it's a way to give a lot of different guys some at-bats. You give Refsnyder some at-bats, you give Bird some at-bats, and you take advantage of some of this bullpen depth.
I like this move a lot for all the reasons that Chad just stated. You're basically developing your own taxi squad. You're taking a 25-man roster, and you're figuring out a way to increase it to 29, 30, 31 players, however many guys you see fitting through that revolving door. And to the first part of what Chad said, I agree with Cashman. I think Castro is going to be able to handle some at third base because you're not asking him to go over there and play 90 games at third base. You're asking him to slide over there in a pinch, maybe once or twice a week when you give Headley some time off. Now, if Headley incurs an injury, then Castro is going to be the third baseman, and you'll see some kind of Refsnyder, Ackley situation at second base. But I think it's a smart move, and it allows them to use more players and use the players they need at that moment for whatever series it might be.
Jack, let's not underestimate how important this gamble is with Castro, because the Yankees really are inheriting 2 players from the Cubs. It's the Castro from the first half who did not play well. I mean, he was benched after he was in the number 3 spot. He really felt there was too much pressure on him. Did not respond and found himself on the bench. Allowed himself to be remade as a second baseman, and to his credit, he came back, he had a terrific second half. He batted .335 after August 1st. A completely different player. So the Yankees are assuming that they're getting the second half Castro from the Cubs. And if that's the case, if he can handle New York, the transition to third base, perhaps, as an experiment, if that all works out, the Yankees really made a steal.
Well, you know what's interesting, too? Second half last season, the Cubs were basically asking him, do something special, move to second base for us. Now the Yankees, Chad and Away, are saying, be a special player for us in a variety of roles. You could really help this team.
Well, and I think with the Cubs last year in the beginning of the year, Castro was a key piece of that. I mean, you look at, he was a big part of that lineup. They have a bunch of young guys coming up, but this guy was supposed to be kind of a real fixture and in a weird spot, though, because he knows he's going to have to move off of shortstop at some point when Russell's there. So I think he did open in an odd way last season for a guy who has had some really good years. And I wonder if some of that maybe accounts for the weird start he had to the season, where kind of a down year. And now he's coming to the Yankees, where they are maybe asking him to do something a little bit different, but in no way is he going to be asked to carry this team. I mean, he knows he's going to open the year. I mean, he may open the year as the number 9 hitter. You know, it's a different kind of pressure on him than what he was dealing with early in Chicago.
I think you're right, and I think you look at the peaks and valleys of his career, and even of last season, as Bob mentioned, I don't see guys 25 who will turn to 26 suddenly regressing. I mean, this is a guy who has about 900 major league hits. I think he's going to come to the Yankees. I think they're going to get an exceptional player. And we had Jim Hendry, the Yankees scout, one of Brian Cashman's lieutenants, on our show from the Hot Stove in Nashville. And he was the GM who was there when they signed Castro. And some of the things he said about Castro's game really resonated with me, and how excited the Yankees are to have him, but also the plate recognition, how they want him to be a little more selective, and how they're going to talk to him about patience. And maybe that 2-1 pitch that you swung at, maybe you take that and you put yourself in a better hitting situation. Now, that may sound like basic stuff, and well, why didn't he do that with the Cubs? Well, sometimes he didn't, and I think the Yankees are going to reinforce that with him.
You know how they're going to reinforce that, Jack? Somebody in spring training is going to be Castro's mentor. Now, we've talked about it on the show. My initial idea was maybe Alfonso Soriano, who played with him in Chicago, gets invited to camp as a guest instructor. It would make all the sense of the world. I mean, they're both Dominican players, and they have a lot of things in common, and it could work. Jack, I think you were the one who came up with the idea. How about A-Rod being sort of the father confessor to Castro. Now, it's kind of odd to think that after everything that A-Rod's been through, suddenly he's the good guy. But he could really help Castro and mature in the way that we're talking about today. It just might work.
Yeah, Jack, it wouldn't be the first time we've heard that from young players about the way they feel about Alex in that role.
Yeah, Alex Rodriguez has faults. He has acknowledged what those faults are. He's made a lot of mistakes. One thing that you will hear from the guys on the team with Alex Rodriguez is he is a very good mentor when it comes to younger players. He'll listen to their problems. He'll talk to them about hitting. And anyone who talks to Alex Rodriguez about the intricacies of the game, you know that he is a student and a very good teacher of the game. Bob got that wrong, by the way, though. I'm the one who suggested Alfonso Soriano.
Really?
You threw A-Rod out there. I went with with Soriano.
I like A-Rod's idea better anyway, so it was mine.
So it's your idea.
There's a lot of hot stoves from the past to sort through. It's hard to keep tabs on all of it. One thing Brian Cashman also brought up, the idea of pitching, that, Chad, sounds like he put out a lot of feelers for a starting pitcher, a lot of different options and trade ideas, and just nothing came to fruition.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is for Brian Cashman to acknowledge that he was willing to listen on Andrew Miller and Brett Gardner. I mean, that's just unusual. He's not saying that he was pushing them. He's not saying he was actually trying to trade them, but he's willing to acknowledge, if those names came up, I wasn't hanging up the phone. I think they went into this offseason, I think they thought they could maybe get a decent pitcher for one of those two guys. And then you look at what the price of pitching was this offseason, both in free agency and in terms of a trade like Shelby Miller, and that just wasn't the going rate for a decent, even a number 3-4 starter. That the going rate was way beyond a Brett Gardner or even a closer like Andrew Miller. I just think the way the market played out this year, maybe they went into it hoping they could move one of those guys to help out their rotation, and that just didn't work out. That's not what the market was.
You're right, Chad. The Yankees, specifically Brian Cashman, was hoping to luck out on a deal like that. But I mean, the business plan, the baseball's economy right now is so through the roof that the Yankees are just not going to spend like that. They're not going to trade like that. I think what they ultimately ended up doing was smart. I mean, they've got a lights-out bullpen now. 9 outs, possibly 9 strikeouts in a row. It's not inconceivable. And that rotation, all it has to do now is sort of cobble together 5-6 innings every night. I think that's realistic. I think it's a pretty good equation right now, the way it's worked out.